Somewhere in the Nevada desert sits a $14 billion underground fortress designed to outlast human civilization, yet it holds absolutely nothing. But that is just one of the staggering monuments to human arrogance hidden around the globe. There is a classified structure in Eastern Europe that costs twice as much as a nuclear plant, designed to stop World War III, which actually did the exact opposite. Join us, and let's discover the 13 most useless megaprojects in human history. Let's go.
Number 13. South China Mall. Imagine building a shopping paradise twice the size of the Mall of America, complete with an indoor roller coaster, a replica of the Venice canals, and an 82-foot replica of the Arc de Triomphe. You open the doors to the public, expecting over 100,000 eager shoppers a day. Instead, absolutely nobody shows up. Welcome to the new South China Mall in Dongguan. Constructed in 2005, developers poured hundreds of millions of dollars into creating the largest shopping complex on the planet based on gross leasable area. They built over 2,300 storefronts. To understand this scale, picture 73 professional football fields stitched together, completely enclosed in glass and steel. Yet for over a decade, 99% of this colossal structure sat in dead silence. The developers made a catastrophic geographical error. They placed this luxury mega-complex in a city primarily populated by poor factory workers who barely had time to sleep, let alone buy high-end designer clothes. Dust gathered on the imported Egyptian sphinxes. The indoor amusement park rides rusted in the humid air. The Venetian gondolas floated idly in stagnant water. It became a terrifying ghost town of modern capitalism. It proves that simply building a giant magnet does not mean the metal will follow. But an empty mall is just a minor financial mistake compared to an entire city built for hundreds of thousands of people that is currently sinking into the raging sea.
Number 12. Forest City. Just off the coast of Malaysia sits a $92 billion artificial paradise that looks like a sci-fi utopia, but feels like an apocalyptic wasteland. This is Forest City. Conceived as a futuristic metropolis built on 4 man-made islands, it was meant to house 700,000 wealthy residents. Imagine a sprawling city where all cars are banished to a massive underground network, leaving the surface exclusively for pedestrians, parks, and towering skyscrapers completely draped in vertical jungles. It was marketed as the ultimate eco-friendly haven for foreign investors. But the dream quickly turned into an absolute nightmare. Geopolitics slammed the brakes on the entire operation. Strict capital controls from foreign governments and sudden changes in Malaysian housing laws essentially banned the exact buyers this city was built for. Today, fewer than 10,000 people live in this sprawling concrete jungle. That is a horrifying 1% occupancy rate. Walking through its massive avenues, you are met with eerie silence. The luxury shopping centers are pitch black, and the massive apartment towers loom like giant empty tombstones overgrown with aggressive tropical vines. The developers are now trapped in a monumental financial crisis, bleeding money every single day to maintain an empty utopia. But while Forest City is slowly being swallowed by the jungle, another massive infrastructure project was totally paralyzed by a simple map error.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this.
Number 11. Berlin-Brandenburg Airport. Germany is globally famous for its ruthless efficiency and flawless engineering, making this next disaster incredibly humiliating. Berlin-Brandenburg Airport was supposed to be the ultimate crown jewel of European aviation. It was designed to handle tens of millions of passengers with absolute perfection, backed by a massive $2 billion budget. But just weeks before its grand opening in 2012, a catastrophic realization halted everything.
The building was a colossal death trap. The complex smoke extraction systems, meant to pull deadly fumes out of the terminal during a fire, were installed completely backward. Instead of venting smoke up into the sky, the system forced toxic air down onto the floor, where passengers would be running for their lives. Think of it like installing the exhaust pipe of your car directly into the passenger cabin. The mistakes did not stop there. Inspectors found miles of poorly wired cables, automatic doors that locked shut during emergency drills, and giant information screens that simply turned themselves on and off. Fixing this nightmare took an agonizing 9 extra years, driving the total cost past $7 billion. By the time it finally opened to the public in 2020, its supposedly futuristic technology was already outdated. It stands today as a permanent stain on the myth of German perfection. Yet a poorly wired airport is nothing compared to a high-speed train completely derailed by simple bureaucracy.
Number 10. California High-Speed Rail. Imagine promising an entire state a futuristic bullet train that could blast from San Francisco to Los Angeles at 220 miles per hour, completely eliminating the need for short flights. In 2008, California voters approved a massive $33 billion budget to build exactly that. It was supposed to be the glorious future of American transit. Instead, it became the most embarrassing money pit in modern transportation history. The project was immediately paralyzed by a nightmare of legal battles, environmental lawsuits, and an absolute failure to secure the necessary land. To understand the scale of this failure, imagine trying to build a sidewalk, but every single homeowner on the block hires a lawyer to stop you. Now multiply that by 500 miles of track, cutting through mountains, farms, and dense cities. The engineering challenges of tunneling through highly active earthquake zones were grossly underestimated. Today, the estimated cost has exploded to an incomprehensible $100 billion, and not a single passenger has ever bought a ticket. Currently, the only sections being built connect small agricultural towns in the middle of nowhere, creating a literal train to nowhere. It drains massive amounts of public funds every single year, while traffic on the highways only gets worse. But burning money on a slow train is one thing. Building a radioactive fortress that you abandon forever is an entirely different level of madness.
Number 9. Yucca Mountain Repository. Deep inside the scorching Nevada desert lies a highly classified $14 billion subterranean fortress built to outlast human civilization itself. This is the Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository. For over 40 years, the United States government blasted an intricate maze of massive tunnels deep into solid volcanic rock. The mission was terrifyingly simple: create an impenetrable bunker capable of safely trapping thousands of tons of deadly radioactive waste for the next 10,000 years. It is basically an artificial tomb designed to hold the most toxic poison ever created by humanity. From a purely engineering standpoint, it was a massive success. The tunnels were reinforced, the radiation shields were perfected, and the rock itself was analyzed to guarantee absolute stability. But the entire project was assassinated by politics. Local communities and fierce political opposition triggered an avalanche of lawsuits, terrified that groundwater could eventually breach the steel containers and poison the region. After spending $14 billion of taxpayer money, the government completely pulled the plug in 2011. Today, these futuristic tunnels sit entirely empty, gathering dust in the dark. America still has no permanent solution for its nuclear waste. But while Yucca Mountain sits empty because of fear, another massive atomic project was entirely built right on top of a ticking geological time bomb.
Number 8. Bataan Nuclear Power Plant. During the brutal oil crisis of the 1970s, the Philippines made a desperate multi-billion-dollar gamble to secure its energy independence. They poured over $2 billion into constructing a state-of-the-art nuclear reactor on the Bataan Peninsula.
The facility was an engineering marvel, completely finished and physically ready to blast massive amounts of cheap electricity to millions of struggling households. But just as they prepared to load the deadly uranium fuel rods, a horrifying discovery was made. The massive concrete reactor was built directly on top of an active earthquake fault line. Even worse, it sat right in the direct blast radius of Mount Natib, a highly dangerous dormant volcano. To put this in perspective, imagine building a fortress made of dynamite and placing it directly next to a roaring campfire. Following the apocalyptic Chernobyl disaster in 1986, the sheer terror of a volcanic eruption triggering a nuclear meltdown forced the government to permanently abandon the facility. Not a single watt of electricity was ever generated. For decades, the struggling nation paid millions in interest on the massive debt used to build a plant they could never turn on. Today, it serves as an incredibly bizarre tourist attraction. But a nuclear plant threatened by a volcano is only mildly terrifying compared to a military superweapon designed to stop nuclear war that absolutely failed.
Number 7. Duga radar. Hidden deep within the frozen forests of Ukraine stands a terrifying monument to Cold War paranoia. The Duga radar, often called the Russian woodpecker, is an apocalyptic lattice of steel reaching nearly 500 feet into the sky and stretching for almost half a mile. It looks like a giant metallic wall built to keep out monsters. Constructed by the Soviet Union in the 1970s at a staggering cost of over $7 billion, this colossal antenna was designed to detect incoming American nuclear missiles. It consumed so much raw power that it required its own dedicated power grid. When activated, it broadcasted a repetitive, aggressive tapping noise that disrupted radio broadcasts worldwide, terrifying civilian listeners. But there was a catastrophic flaw. The fundamental science behind the radar was completely wrong. The extreme atmospheric interference of the northern lights rendered the massive antenna entirely blind to actual missile launches. It was an ultra-expensive shield made of paper. When the Chernobyl nuclear disaster erupted just a few miles away in 1986, the Duga radar was severely irradiated and immediately abandoned. Today, this massive apocalyptic steel wall silently rusts in the radioactive dead zone, totally useless to the empire that built it. But while the Soviets built useless walls of steel to stop missiles, another European power built a massive underground wall of concrete to stop an entire army.
Number 6. Maginot Line. Following the unimaginable meat grinder of the First World War, France vowed to never let a foreign army step foot on their soil again. They poured the modern equivalent of $9 billion into constructing the Maginot Line. This was not just a wall, it was an incredible, continuous subterranean city stretching 280 miles along the German border. It featured armored gun turrets, heavily reinforced bunkers, underground hospitals, and electric trains moving ammunition deep beneath the earth. It was universally praised as the most impenetrable defensive structure ever conceived in human history. To a civilian, it looked like an absolute guarantee of total safety. But the brilliant engineers forgot one crucial element: military strategy evolves. When World War II erupted in 1940, the brilliant German armored divisions simply looked at this massive multi-billion-dollar fortress and drove entirely around it. They blasted their tanks through the dense Ardennes forest in Belgium, a route the French generals arrogantly thought was physically impossible for heavy armor to cross. Millions of French soldiers sat trapped inside their high-tech underground bunkers, utterly useless, while the enemy rapidly captured Paris behind their backs. The Maginot Line proved that the most expensive shield in history is worthless if your enemy can just walk around it. But an obsolete military base is nothing compared to an entire capital city that simply has no citizens.
Number 5. Naypyidaw. Deep inside the remote jungles of Myanmar lies a surreal, massive metropolis that is 6 times the geographic size of New York City, yet it feels completely abandoned. This is Naypyidaw. In 2005, the ruling military regime suddenly decided to abandon the historic capital of Yangon and construct a sprawling new fortress city from scratch. They burned almost $4 billion building 20-lane mega highways, impeccable luxury golf courses, massive shopping centers, and colossal government palaces. The infrastructure is flawlessly modern, boasting 24-hour electricity and high-speed internet, absolute luxuries in a terribly impoverished nation. But the government forgot to build a reason for normal people to live there. Civilians absolutely refused to relocate to this sterile, authoritarian utopia. Today, Naypyidaw is the world's most expensive ghost town. The massive 20-lane highways are so incredibly empty that you can physically lie down in the middle of the road and take a nap without seeing a single car. The silence is deeply unsettling. It is a city engineered for absolute control, deliberately isolated from the masses to prevent political uprisings. But a city without citizens is just an incredibly expensive graveyard of concrete. Yet building an empty city on solid ground is at least physically stable. Building hundreds of islands out of loose sand, however, is a direct challenge to the devastating power of the ocean.
Number 4. Ciudad Real Central Airport. Deep within the sun-drenched plains of Spain sits a billion-dollar ghost airport, designed to be a grand gateway to Europe, but instead became a silent graveyard for dead airplanes. Developers launched a staggeringly ambitious plan to build a massive international transit hub to relieve the heavy traffic of Madrid. They spent over $1 billion constructing a titan of engineering, featuring one of the longest runways on the entire continent. To visualize this ridiculous scale, imagine a concrete runway so immensely long that you could comfortably line up 45 Boeing 747 passenger jets nose to tail and still have room to spare. They built a hyper-modern terminal designed to process over 10 million passengers every single year, promising that high-speed bullet trains would whisk travelers to the capital in less than an hour. But the entire project was hit by a brutal economic crisis. The airlines refused to fly there, and travelers realized that landing 2 hours away from their destination was completely useless. The airport filed for bankruptcy, seeing only a tiny handful of flights before locking its doors forever. Today, this colossal monument to human error sits in eerie silence, used only as a parking lot for broken jets. But an empty runway is just a terrible financial gamble. Constructing an entire castle complex straight out of a fairy tale and abandoning it to rot is a deeply psychological terror.
Number 3. Burj Al Babas. Nestled in the picturesque rolling hills of northwestern Turkey sits a terrifying scene straight out of a dystopian fairy tale. Welcome to Burj Al Babas. Imagine standing on a hill and looking down at over 700 identical, miniature Disney-style castles, completely abandoned and decaying in the sun. Launched in 2014, developers poured $200 million into creating a hyper-luxury retreat specifically targeted at ultra-wealthy Gulf investors. Each bizarre villa featured Gothic turrets, classical balconies, and a massive price tag of $500,000. It was supposed to be a surreal, magical paradise, but the magic violently collapsed. Turkey suffered a brutal economic downturn. Massive inflation skyrocketed, and the developers instantly filed for bankruptcy. The construction crews dropped their tools and walked away, leaving exactly 732 empty castles rotting in the dirt. There is no plumbing, no electricity, and no life. Walking through the identical, tightly packed rows of Gothic mansions feels intensely claustrophobic and deeply unsettling, like a simulation that abruptly ran out of funding. It is an architectural nightmare, a monument to blind greed that permanently scarred a beautiful valley. But while these empty castles are creepy, they pale in comparison to a colossal scientific tunnel built beneath Texas that was designed to unlock the secrets of the universe, only to be completely buried alive.
Number 2. Superconducting Super Collider. Deep beneath the sprawling plains of Waxahachie, Texas, lies the grave of what was supposed to be humanity's greatest scientific machine. The superconducting Super Collider was designed to be the undisputed king of physics. It was a staggering 54-mile-long underground ring created to smash subatomic particles together at speeds approaching the speed of light. To visualize this, imagine a high-tech tunnel so incredibly massive that it could easily wrap around the entire city of Dallas. The United States government approved the mind-blowing project to discover the elusive God particle, pouring over $2 billion into excavating 14 miles of massive subterranean tunnels. But suddenly, the financial math became completely unstable. Estimated costs skyrocketed past $12 billion. Simultaneously, the Cold War ended, totally killing the political pressure to beat the Soviets in scientific dominance. In a brutal vote in 1993, Congress completely pulled the plug on the operation. The high-tech tunnels were intentionally flooded with water and permanently sealed with thousands of tons of concrete. Humanity lost a machine that could have rewritten the laws of physics. Today, billions of dollars of engineering are permanently buried in the dark. But abandoning a subterranean ring is nothing compared to the absolute zenith of architectural madness. The most expensive, ominous, and terrifying empty building is a pyramid of pure isolation.
Number 1. Ryung Hotel. Towering like a massive, jagged dagger over the impoverished skyline of Pyongyang stands the ultimate monument to absolute madness. The Ryung Hotel is a colossal, 1,080-foot-tall pyramid of concrete and dark glass that dominates North Korea. Initiated in 1987 to aggressively flex military and economic power against South Korea, this monstrous structure was designed to hold 3,000 luxury rooms and 5 spinning restaurants. The totalitarian regime burned over $700 million on the frame, a staggering 2% of their entire national GDP. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, the cash flow vanished. For 16 long, agonizing years, the windowless, menacing concrete skeleton loomed over the starving population like a dystopian supervillain lair, earning the global nickname the Hotel of Doom. Even after an Egyptian company finally slapped glass panels onto the exterior in 2008 to hide the rotting concrete, the interior remains a terrifying pitch-black void. There are no finished rooms, no working plumbing, and no functional power grid. Structural engineers secretly suspect the low-quality concrete is so incredibly degraded that the building could be completely unstable. It has never hosted a single guest in almost 40 years. It stands as the absolute king of useless megaprojects, a towering multi-million-dollar tombstone to human ego that dominates the sky. Totally empty, watching over a silent capital.
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.